And all the decisions that you make in terms of learning will be based on the information gathered. And by that, I also mean interviewing people, talking to them, having random conversations. So people may think you're socializing and talking about it, but that is your live research. You do not stop researching at all whatsoever.
Wow, Aditi, I'm very, very impressed.
Thank
And
you.
it's also turning out to be such an interesting conversation, therefore.
Hi there. Thank you so much for joining me on one more episode of the Absolutely Right podcast. My name is Aditi Surana. I'm a graphologist, a high performance coach, and an anti anxiety expert. On each episode of the Absolutely Right podcast, my attempt is to give you a tool, a method, a hack for you to claim the best version of yourself. In order to achieve that, we do three things on our Wednesday episode. First, we invite some high performers like leaders, entrepreneurs, change makers, basically people who have cracked the code and have become successful. Second, I use this fascinating, accurate method of personality assessment called Graphology or handwriting analysis to dive deep into their personalities and crack the code. And third, in between this analysis, I pause and tell you to look at your own handwriting and understand whether you are that kind of a person or not. What do you require to do to change yourself in order to become the best version of yourself? And that is the large idea of this podcast, where we can really find ways, methods, and hacks for you to claim the best version of yourself. On today's episode, I had the privilege to talk to, interview, and analyze the Chief Marketing Officer of IBM India and South Asia, Deepali Naair. As you listen to the episode, you'll notice that Deepali is an overachiever in her own right. But during the lockdown, she decided to reinvent herself and share her wisdom with the world with her podcast, Being CEO with Deepali Naair. Now, today, while listening to this conversation, you'll realize this, that with each conversation's story and her time-tested models of thinking, Deepali gives you ways, hacks, and methods to reinvent yourself, to realize your own potential, to change your perspective. So if you're a young professional who wants to run a large team one day or become a CEO yourself, then make sure that you make notes on today's conversations, because it is full of all the actions that you can take and implement in your life right away. So without further ado, let's get to the conversation. I cannot wait to get started. Stay tuned. Hi, Deepali. Welcome to Absolutely Right. I have your handwriting sample with me already, but instead of sending one sample, you sent me two. Why did you do that?
Because the second one was handy.
Okay.
I did follow your brief and I did write it, and I felt very artificial writing it,
Okay.
saying just write something. And I did have the notes handy from a previous meeting, and I'd just taken a picture of that because I needed to share it with my team. So I
Okay.
just forwarded the same picture to you guys.
So I do have like the natural writing, which is a sample, and also you being in action in your meeting. So both the samples in front of me.
Yes.
So, when I looked at your sample, when I looked at your handwriting, there are a few things that stood out, very, very specific things that I want to begin talking about them before we go to your questions. Now, as a person, you look at every single problem as a challenge. And, mostly people imagine their lives to be happy when they're less challenged and questioned and thrown into problems. For you, if you're not thrown into problems, you get bored, you get agitated, and you get so irritated that it is better to have you solving huge problems than not having to solve problems.
I wouldn't say I get agitated, but I get bored for sure. Uh,
And very quickly.
yeah, I get bored for sure. So I do need a challenge to solve. I do need a problem to solve, especially in my professional life. I want to fix it.
Yeah, all the time. And you thrive if you have problems which are repetitive. You think something is going wrong in this system. I need to have newer problems to solve. Now I have to tell you this from the writing aspect. When you write your letters, we break handwritings in three zones.
Yeah.
One we call upper zone, second we call middle zone, where you have all A, O, that middle part of the writing, and then we have lower zone where Y loops and G loops. In your case, the upper loops are well formed, and they are you are imaginative the way they are formed, and also the way you look at the future, the way you look at what can be done in a situation is very specific.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if you haven't done the root cause analysis and if you haven't fixed the problem at the core, and if you've only solved the symptoms,
Mhm.
you're not doing problem solving at all. You've got to fix the system. So to me, it's about efficiency. It's like last year, for the same amount of things, if I took 100 hours, then I think this year, me and my team included, not just me, okay, me and my team included, should take maybe 80 hours or 75 hours, and we should do something new in the other 20 hours. But I think how this interestingly translates into work, because there are not always problems to solve. You're obviously fixing the system. And I also don't believe that that we should invent problems when
True.
but I think what that translates into, that I set up new innovation or new challenges for the team to say, okay,
True.
what's the next mountain to climb? It's like that. Okay.
Right.
Now I often am found saying this to the team, that okay, we are 10 on 10. Okay.
Wow.
How do we become 11 on 10?
Okay.
That's
Now,
the favorite statement that a lot of my team members will tell you. I still remember I was, I think, perhaps 16 or 17, and me and my mom were talking. And I have studied in Government Girls College in a place called Sri Ganganagar. Not too many people would have heard of it.
okay.
If 100 girls started out first year, in college, only 50 passed out because the rest got married. So I'm giving you that societal context to
Wow.
the anecdote. So I was talking to my mother and I said, look, I think I should look at doing my MPhil and PhD, and I can be a professor then, and professors have a great balance, in terms of career and home, and they have holidays along with their kids and so on and so forth. And my mom challenged me and she said, why would you want to think of your career like this? Why can't you think of your career in terms of, this is my potential and this is the best that I can get to? And she, of course, had a dream of me becoming an IAS officer. Well, I never did become one, but I think she's very satisfied with my career today, with, let's say, the distance I've traveled. It is not about the heights. I think it's about where you came from and the distance that you've traveled. So I don't think I was detailed enough to know exactly that I'm going to be a CMO or I'll work for a corporate job. I didn't even know what a corporate job was at that point of time. But yes, I did want to achieve a certain height, and I did want to maximize my potential.
So first of all, before we talk about your aspiration, it's amazing to have that from your mom.
Yes, I think
That
so.
was incredible to see that. And I think moms like that have created solid women today, and the leaders that we see today. It's
Absolutely.
amazing.
And I mean, this podcast is not meant for it, but I think there are several other anecdotes and stories that I can tell you where my mom's just pushed me into thinking and doing differently, including, a laughing one the other day. I told her about a friend of mine who's finished her PhD 4 years ago. So I went and told her, I said, so she's now a doctor. And my mom said, oh, I didn't know you could do your PhD after your MBA. And I was like, yeah, you can do your PhD at any point of time that you like. And my mom goes in Hindi. She says, मुझे पता होता तो मैं तेरे को पहले ही करा देती.
I know that line, "Pehle kara deti," is like how the homework was done. Perfect. Yeah. The whole aspect of planning things and executing things graphologically is found in the letter F. And people who form that letter with both the loops well formed, and the center part of the letter F, if it connects properly where it begins, if it comes back to the same point, it talks about your ability to have great sync in your planning and execution.
Yeah. And I think it does, right?
Yeah, great sync. I wonder how you managed to do it, but you have created multiple plans and somehow figured out ways to execute them to the T. And I believe that's one of the key factors why your execution is like beautiful, and people look at it and they fall for it and they wonder in all these chaotic pieces how you get the team going, how you get the uncontrolled, all ducks in a row basically. How do you manage? Please tell us some secrets. How do you manage that?
I don't know. I think I would like to believe that I'm gifted
with execution. Oh my God, that's some gift to have.
Yeah, but I think the question that keeps coming to me from people is not what you're asking. Interestingly, Aditi, so compliments to you, I think, for analyzing it and saying it like this. But I think a lot of the times people come back and tell me, how do you do so much?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question that gets asked to me, saying, how do you do so much? And I think in organizations where I work, people do depend on me for that eye for detail. So that's what they come back to me and say, you have phenomenal eye for detail. My bosses have always told me that you're very dependable, and that if we give you a task, it'll get done. You're sure about that. And I think my interest in design, perhaps my interest in art, correlated to me being in marketing and brand and logos and so on and so forth, comes from there. But I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
Very interesting. You said it is planning and execution. And it's interesting that I have, often asked myself this question, and also asked for feedback from managers whom I worked closely with. And I said, what am I better at, planning or execution?
That's a tough one, because the kind of planning that you do or you used to do was way more meticulous than what you do right now. Right now, you are pulled into multiple directions. So definitely now the importance on planning is lesser. I think you check those plans more than actually planning them. So I would give the higher score on execution, because no matter how far you are from the actual action and the platform and the stage, you do find that one gap, one discrepancy. And I think that is the gift that you have, to be able to call out
all the time. My friends who know me, and my teammates, I still remember, especially when I used to be with Mahindra Holidays and at L&T Insurance, there'll be like one typo, Deepali, how do you find it? You get one number wrong in Excel sheet, how do you find it?
That's a gift, definitely, to be able to pick that one thing. So I would definitely give way higher scoring on execution for your skill set. Now, the next point that I was talking about is the way you reinvented yourself over and over again. And I want to talk about the 3A model. And I was fascinated when I learned about it, because do tell us about how you use it in your career and in your marketing domain, and how do you then translate it in your personal life.
I will talk about it, but I want to ask you that your observation on me reinventing myself is from the handwriting or from my profile?
Completely from your handwriting. Let me break it down from where I come from. Okay. The first aspect, for somebody who reinvents themselves, they have great learning ability. In the handwriting, it is shown when the lowercase letter T is shorter than the letter H.
Okay.
And in your case, that is found almost in every single formation. Now that shows that every time you're in a situation, instead of saying, how do I fight this? How do I get out of this? You're like, what can I learn from the situation? And that is a rare behavioral pattern. Second thing, you have good formation in letter E, which means the loop in the E is completely open. A person like that is highly observant and a great listener. Thereby, you keep absorbing things that you can learn, you can pick up, you can kind of, create your pool of information. Third thing is the letter M that you form. It has great humps and smooth formations. Every letter M like that talks about your ability to gather information, research and collect data, and all the decisions that you make in terms of learning will be based on the information gathered. And by that, I also mean interviewing people, talking to them, having random conversations. So people may think you're socializing and talking about it, but that is your live research. You do not stop researching at all whatsoever. So those were my graphological finding to say that.
Wow, Aditi, I'm very, very impressed.
Thank you.
It's also turning out to be such an interesting conversation, therefore. And yes, I think the two words that you used, which is gathering information all the time and the learning bit, I think, and I will correlate that to the model, the AAA model, a little later. But let me just reflect on that and rephrase that in my words. I may not have been like this when I was younger. I don't know, but I'm definitely like this today. I think one goes through tough times, one goes through failures, and it is possible for you to become pessimistic. It's possible for you to even question God, at times when you're going through tough times. And if you need to reframe it for you to feel positive in your life, is when you say, okay, what did this teach me? And how have I become a better person on account of this tough experience that I have gone through? It can happen at work, it can happen in your personal life, So that I think the learnability comes from there. But along with that, I don't know how you phrase it in the graphology language. I think also is something which I have discovered about myself. It needed to be told to me, and I work with a coach, which is that I'm very resilient. I bounce back from the failure. So I think this goes together, right? And now let's come to the three A's, which is authenticity, agility, and ability. So the ability part really comes from there, because this whole learning and researching means that I am becoming more and more able, or I'm becoming, more able as relevant to the times, right? And the agility comes from the context of learning fast, and being able to pivot, being able to change, yourself in keeping with the times. Authenticity, I think, is a gift. I think right from childhood, the experiences that I had with my parents, the value system from there, along with, I think, the courage that perhaps my early experiences, gave me. Or every time, I think the experience that gave me the authenticity comes from there. I went for Shiv Khera workshop, and I think Shiv does it very well, where he tells you to drop a vision of your life, and he talks to you about good values. And one of the things that I had a discussion with him was about not lying ever. And I had a young child, and to distract children, sometimes we lie, right?
Right, of course.
Had a great discourse and a discussion with him, and he spoke about, he said, you need to distract, but don't distract a child with lies. Distract a child with other truths. That's
Wow.
important.
Wow.
And
Please
similarly,
talk more about this. This is such a wonderful and powerful point.
and so I will give you an example of that. And also same at work. I have to, let's say, no to a media house for a sponsorship. That's where I learned. And I said, I will not just say no to them by saying, it's very easy for me to say, I don't have the budget.
Right.
Just so easy for a CMO to say, oh, this quarter I don't have the budget, or this month I don't have the budget. But actually, you do have the budget, and you want to say no to them for all the right reasons by telling them. And I think I've taken upon myself to tell them that, look, this is how it doesn't work for me. But the thing that I've added on after that is, in telling all the partners who come to me with proposals, is, okay, why don't you go and speak to so and so brand, because I think it'll work for them. I've always given them another suggestion or another lead, and sometimes they pan out. And that is also translated again in the world around me, thinking that I'm very authentic, and that I'm purposeful in that sense. And why I say I got lucky is that just after I'd come from Shiv's workshop one day, and my son was little, so erraticness was there in life. One day I listened to the alarm, snoozed it, and went back to sleep. And next, when I woke up, I was massively late to office. Okay. So I messaged my boss and said, look, I'm late to work or whatever. And I think when we met next on the call or whatever, he said, what happened, So, chances are that in office, most people do this, traffic tha, ghar mein koi kaam tha, maid nahi aayi thi or whatever. But I decided, because I had just come from this workshop, and I said, this was Sanjay Prakash, at HSBC. I said, Sanjay, you know what happened? The alarm rang. I snoozed it, and I just didn't get up after that. That's what really happened. He laughed and he said, hota hai. And I think that one incident and his reaction built, my resolve into being truthful always.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know I must tell you, this was my next point, graphologically speaking. The letter A and O in the writing talks about how clear you are in your way of presenting yourself. So if I have to talk about one factor of honesty, I would say the letter A and O, and how they're formed without inside them. And most of your A and O letters do not have loops. So what you're saying in authenticity, and that's how I was so keen to ask you this question, because I wanted to connect the authenticity with these honesty traits in your writing, and this incredible to see. And it's tougher to live this life, right? Tougher to walk that extra path, taking that extra effort to create a lead and help the agency to look for another. It's not something that everybody would think about. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing it.
And I'm quite proud as a mother to tell you that I think my son has seen this in us. And I will tell you that he's he's 16 and a half, incredibly honest and incredibly truthful, again, as a child. That's a one thing he also knows that I value.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think a difficult thing for a young child to do, but he does.
So I get these parents coming to us and they say, please analyze my child's writing. And I don't give feedback to kids below 14. My simple logic is whatever is happening in your kid's life, you can reflect on your own behavior and you can influence it. So the
Absolutely.
fact that you have been living this authentic life, that is a major reason why your child represents what you have been, living, not what you're saying, but what you're living. So
Aditi,
that's
absolutely. I think, especially on the children front, I'm very sentimental and emotional about it. So, anybody who's listening to this podcast, I think totally, if your children behave badly, if your children have good values, if your children have bad values, I think you just need to reflect on your behavior, because children do not follow things that you say.
exactly.
Children follow things that you do. So, I think it's on us.
Yeah, so true, so true. And I think that's what makes it so meaningful, beautiful, and difficult to parent a child. I'm so sure.
There are lots of people, for example, they become masters at painting, or that, pencil craft is their thing, or, some cooking is their thing. I've not had a steady hobby at all. Uh,
Hmm.
yes, I have been teaching over the years. And if somebody forces me to say, okay, how do you kind of, utilize your time and become this all-rounded personality, then I will say that, look, I've been teaching. Okay.
Hmm.
But, off late, I discovered and that I'm pretty good at podcasting. I didn't know that, I was going to be, good at it, and the podcast is doing really well. So I wanted to ask you that if I look at this whole thing of, uh, I don't know, you want to call it crafts, you want to call it, extracurriculars or hobbies. Is there anything else that you think I should explore?
I think the hobby that you have and you're extremely consistent with is to reinvent yourself.
Okay. So
So
that's two
that is your hobby. So
criteria.
every time you got to reinvent yourself, it has to be in a different manner. So you will never have one hobby. So please leave that thought,
Okay.
absolutely throw it out of the window, and make sure that you keep picking up things, because why you do these hobbies in the first place? To explore the unknown, explore something that is unexplored. And in your case, the depth matters, but what is really important is, what if I have something very interesting that I haven't tasted yet? That is your reason to explore so many things. Carl Jung has this line. He says the only and only objective that we have is to find the true expression of the self. And true expression may mean, that if you don't realize the entire self, you will be unhappy in some or the other manner. If you chance upon something, that hobby that you want to pursue, probably you'll continue. But currently, till you find that one love of your life, I think flirt with all the possibilities of different hobbies and arts you have.
So next, I want to write a book. What do you think?
I think that would be amazing. And not only amazing because you are, good at what you do and you're amazing at, solving these problems. I think the expression is not only about writing, is about giving back. So I
Yes.
feel that thought is powerful. So you must write a book, because now you're at a point where you're like, before I so-called walk away from this corporate world, let me give back and teach people, train people. So the trainer, teacher, and the preacher also in you is coming alive and becoming stronger. So that the voice is becoming stronger. I think it's the right time for you to jump in with that and actually get to it.
Great. Because I think the podcast was also started with the same idea. The idea was that there is a niche
Mm.
where the Indian leadership has not been well covered and not well documented. And I think
Right.
young B school graduates, young professionals, they want inspiration. They want to know how the CEOs, of India Inc. do it. So there again, and I know that kind of purpose always motivates me. So yes, so thank you for ratifying for me that I should probably do the book thing.
But Dipali, when I was listening to your podcast, I also felt that in a way, the new young generations, the aspiring leaders, will find a realistic idea of leadership. That's what I thought, which was very interesting, because mostly these conversations glorify the role of CEO. When you break it down and the questions that you ask are specific and they allow people to be realistic about how the situation is going to be, I think that is really
The
amazing.
word is authentic.
Yeah,
Again.
point taken,
Yeah.
point taken.
And I do tell my CEOs this when I interview them. I said, look, I'm on your side. I want you to come across as the great person that you are. But the journey to that greatness is not all a bed of roses, neither is it all high points at every point of time in your life.
Mm.
So yeah, there also we try and be authentic. Another curious question about your craft.
Mhm.
People's handwriting over the years changes, right?
Right.
So does that mean when you do the graphology analysis, if I had a handwriting sample from my, let's say, 10 years or 15 years ago, it could be different and therefore different personality and different traits?
So when I do high performance coaching, I meet people every 15 days
Okay.
and I analyze the comparative analysis and tell them what has shifted in their thinking process in just 15 days.
Okay. And
So
you
it's
do this on the basis of their handwriting.
completely. So why does it happen? Handwriting has three parts. One, that is permanence, that would not change. Like how certain behavioral patterns you're kind of born with or you picked up very early and they stay no matter which job you did, who you were hanging with, what were your challenges, they just stay.
Right.
Handwriting also has that part. There are others which change every 5 to 6 years. And this is where you see, your shift happening and your career moving and your roles changing. You adapt and you become that, and a few traits change every day.
Oh,
So depending on your mood, depending on how fresh you are, how agitated you are, body posture, everything. So it's like and that's why I feel, I'm also trained on other psychometric tests and I love the structure that they provide and I use it. But graphology is one thing which gives you that authentic, deeper aspect. So I combine the two. So I do believe in the structure, but you don't get that everyday shift in somebody's behavior to see if I am coaching somebody on one particular behavior of leadership. Has it changed? How much is it changing? What exactly is happening within? So these minute body feedbacks that you get, nobody can tweak that. Nobody can, turn it around and give you another story about it. So that's how
so
this.
so did you find any difference in the two writing samples that I gave you?
I
Because
would
we were
not say.
written in different frames of mind. I don't remember whether it was one day different or same day. I don't remember that.
I would not say the handwritings are different as such, but yes, when you are in your in this particular meeting that you had, if I have to compare the traits, you
Hmm.
were being extremely end result oriented for whatever meeting that was. You were focusing on that idea, and I'm saying this because when you cut your lowercase letter t, the line that you put, the horizontal line in the page, the notes page of the meeting, it's exactly at 50% most of the time. And that talks about how specific you were at getting that final result. Also, I feel in the notes page, you are being more of a perfectionist. You had certain things that you were kind of trying to nail with your team and you were unwilling to compromise. Was it true? Was that the meeting about?
It was actually a meeting about me speaking at a St. Xavier's session that I was invited to. So
Mm-hmm.
we were brainstorming and simultaneously we were saying that yes, how do we ensure we finished in 45 minutes?
Okay.
Because the talk had to be finished in 45 minutes, and therefore we were prioritizing that we will bring in this question and we won't bring in that question. So yes, yeah, in a manner of speaking, it was very result oriented because we were trying to prioritize and choose what will fit into 45 minutes talk. Uh,
Hmm.
kind of a thing. So yes,
Makes
you're
sense.
right. Superb.
Thank you.
You are very young and you are very, very impressive at the craft that you
Thank you.
know and that you have, really. Uh, Anything about my decision making style apart from this whole era that you've said that I ask a lot of questions? Anything else?
Okay. So decision making style, if I have to define your style, I would say the decisions that you consider tough. You
Hmm.
ponder about them from multiple platforms and perspectives. You would not jump to conclusions. And if people push you to do that, you push them back. You definitely draw that line and you would not let people, force you to make a decision if there is a significant one. So the process matters more than the result for you.
Okay.
And that is the difference in your style of decision making. You would not rush, you would not be hasty about it. And that's why I believe all the bosses said that once we give something to you, we can just go to bed, sleep completely, forget that the work needs to be done because you will be on top of it. That comes from being process oriented and not result oriented,
Hmm.
which is the impression that people have about you. The way you're perceived, I would say, people think you're all about results, but I would say you're all about process. And if the process is off, you would not move an inch.
I guess I'm both, because there are times when I'm also known for my quick decision making.
No, those decisions are not the significant ones.
Mm.
Quick decisions is where the process is already built. And thereby, in the moment, the decisions are so fast, and that's why you're perceived like that. But the processing is very, very clear. So the steps, the 5 steps you require to reach the final goal are already in your mind. They may happen in the moment, right? They would not take time. And the agility part that you talk about, I think this is where the agility comes from. It is not about the speed, right? It is about how well do you walk into this, and you're very clear about why are you doing it.
Yeah, and it's about the smooth pivot. It's not you don't want it to be jerky.
Yeah.
It's like when you're dancing, you move from one movement into another with a grace. So it is, so agility is actually about that. Otherwise, we can call it speed. Otherwise, we can call it, just sheer velocity. It's not about that. It's about moving from pivoting, with grace.
You would love this. There's a word in Yoga Sutra called Prayatna Shaithilya. And in English, we would loosely translate it as effortlessness. But Prayatna Shaithilya is where Prayatna, which is efforts, become non-existent. So it becomes Shithil. So you have practiced something to a point that you've mastered it, and now it feels effortless. Not because it is effortless. So your quick decision making looks quick, but not because it is fast, because you have gone through the grind and you've created the process so well that in the moment it feels instinctive.
Yeah, and if it's for a knowledge worker, it's about having done the research or having the experiences, to know that this fast decision can be taken. Yeah, I know, because I've asked this question to myself often, because I know that there are some things I don't decide fast on, and there are some things that I decide fast on, and there's no framework for that. There is no it's not like you can categorize it and say home decisions fast or financial decisions fast. No, it's not like that. There is no categorization. So yeah, perhaps what you're saying, where I'm comfortable with the research and the process, where I've asked enough questions in the past and connected the dots, so to speak, in the past, that I
Exactly
do it fast. Yeah, but I do believe that delayed decision is like losing money. I think delayed decision is not always a great idea. A lot of, the organization, you yourself, I think, lose a lot of effort. And
so you shouldn't be pondering so much that you're missing the opportunity. There is what you mean.
yes,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah,
I want to talk about 2 things which kind of concern me looking at your writing.
yes,
First is you do get caught up in some worrying thinking pattern.
yes.
And worry is about ruminating, right? It's not about the problem solving as such, which you otherwise excel at, but it's about going back, imagining scenarios which are not true, and literally reliving them, using all your storytelling and writing skills on them, and not necessarily doing good for yourself.
I agree with you. I have a hugely vivid imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I can run a video of, what this wrong scenario is going to look like 3 years from now. And I think I self-inflict that onto me,
Completely.
where very often I need to say to myself that I need to break this cycle and think about something else. So, when lots of people say, meditate, take rest, stop thinking, I'm like, my brain cannot stop thinking. So the best way for me to do it is to get into something else, which completely, is taking me away from thinking about this particular situation. Yes, it's self-inflicted, and I think I don't know if you have a solution, and if you have a tip and trick, please do share it with me. But I think that's the one learning that's happening just now in my life, that I should stop imagining these negative scenarios.
Okay, I'm saying that from your writing because when you write your lowercase letter r, there is a loop in the stomach of the r, the center part of the r, there's a loop.
Okay.
So you may think that removing the loop will solve the problem. Not really.
Yeah.
This is just a representation of the writing. The solution we can find in some graphotherapy strokes, but the one which I always recommend, especially for a person who cannot only meditate, cannot stop the imagination. So the mental problem might not be solved by thinking about it. it's not possible. Every time you try to solve it, it becomes even more chaotic, and your story just have different variations to it more than stopping it. So I believe when your mind is playing the trick, we should lead with the body. So when we use graphotherapy or handwriting strokes, it's a doodling kind of technique, but it is breath coordinated and the stroke is very, very specific. So the
Mhm.
stroke that I'm referring to is called Kama Sutra S stroke. It genuinely has the calming effect of on your mind, and your body starts calming down. So I will send you the link, and I will also mention in the description for people to learn that stroke. The idea here is when you do the formation of the stroke, which is like the 8 number or like S stroke we call it, when you do that, your breath and your mind both starts following the formation. So you don't have to do specific things to distract your mind, but you use your body to communicate with your mind that now it's the time to follow this formation. And that, I believe, is really, really powerful. So any anxiety, any dramatic physical reactions that your imagination cause, here you're using the body to break that whole cycle in a loop.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad you're going to share it with all the listeners.
Have you read the book Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi?
No, not
So
yet. So I will.
highly recommend. He talks about this whole idea of being in a flow
Hmm.
when your mind requires some degree of challenge. So you have to feel the challenge to be interested, and also you have to have the skill set. So if the skill is too low, then you're not interested, you can't do it. If it is too high and if the challenge is not good enough, you won't be bothered. So he says there's a balance. When you start learning, when you start picking up information, so many times it creates the pressure for you personally to live up to certain expectations.
Yeah.
People are not expecting that of you.
No.
You create these roles and these standards for you, and
It is.
you absolutely cannot afford to break them in your own mind. Nobody is saying anything. And
Yes.
that battle turns into a war in no time, and you are at war pretty much all the time.
With myself.
Yes, with yourself, no one else. And that's why it is so difficult for anybody to intervene and help you, because that war is for real, and it is such an intense experience. So that's
So
another area of concern.
yeah, so I don't know good or bad, but let me just share with you, something that happened last year, and that
Mhm.
will tell you, and that made it clear to me that I do this to myself. Okay.
Okay.
So I decided to do the podcast. The founder of Avaz.com is a friend for a long time.
Mhm.
This whole idea I told you of, the purposeful, the leadership,
Right.
authentic leadership I wanted to bring to the table. The earlier idea was that I would actually write a column, and then Shri convinced me, and he said, "Why don't you just speak about it? I then
Mm.
do it in a podcast format also, right?" So then started the research, right? uh, what is the right format of the thing? How do we do this? What is the right length?
Right.
Kind of people, should they be diverse? I think he's told me, he says, you did, he tells me this is the amount of research that you put into getting it out,
Yeah.
and doing it myself. And
Okay.
I after that I had it clear in my head, it was going to be 30 minutes. I'm going to record only on the weekends, because I needed
Mhm.
to do that also, that
Right.
IBM comes first, the IBM job comes first, so therefore, how do I balance my time? Okay. Not only this, but I think somewhere, even when it comes to the value system,
Mm.
uh, I think I do set a high benchmark for myself first,
Right.
more than anybody else. Uh,
And those things are self-critical traits too. So
yes,
in your signature, there's a line that comes back and then moves forward.
yes.
Anything in your writing that moves from the right side to the left side talks about intense self criticism, not just light. So it's not about failing in terms of results, but if you don't meet your own standards, that is definitely unacceptable for you. But at the same time, you're very harsh with yourself when it comes to that discussion. And
Yes.
that mental dialogue and that personal conversation in the mirror is reprimanding.
Yeah,
It's
my
very
my coach very often says to myself, saying, sympathize with yourself, empathize with yourself, give yourself credit. These are statements that I need to be told,
every now and then.
every now and then. And I guess I'm learning, Aditi. I'm getting better at it.
I'm
I I need to cut myself some slack.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
but yeah, I mean, I know that the bar is high, and first for myself, and then I think with the others, because
Absolutely.
somewhere I come from this context that look, if I can't lead that life, and if I can't be creative, and if I can't be innovative myself, and if I can't do social media well myself, how do I tell the team to be better at it or good at it? So I know it comes from there also.
I hear you loud and clear, and I know that that has been your pursuit of excellence. But what you're talking about right now, that has moved to perfectionism. So there's
Yeah.
a slight difference there that gets to you.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for saying that too.
Most welcome. Now, lastly, before we go, I want to talk about the rock model that you spoke about. And I think this is interesting because people should look at their life from reflection a lot more than what they ever did, especially during the lockdown. And we speak a lot about journaling, and we speak about every day taking that 15-20 minutes to ask yourself some solution oriented questions so that you can journal.
I think this is again in the pursuit of the learning and wanting to learn all the time. So this is a principle for learning. So R stands for reflection, which is to say that everybody must learn from their own experiences, which is the first thing that you spoke about, from my handwriting bit.
Right.
Extremely important. And I also believe that you must not reflect alone. If you actually have a coach with whom you reflect, then you learn faster. Uh,
Definitely.
and
Definitely.
that independent voice is required. The O is for others. Okay, what you can learn from other people's mistakes, which is again what you spoke about. Remember that I am talking to people, I'm not just socializing, I'm doing research in my own thinking, right? So I
Right.
strongly believe that you must learn from others. Extremely important. That way, your mistakes and your own mistakes in your life or at your work can be smaller, can be faster, because you've kind of learned this from others. The C in the rock stands for classroom. I think there's room for us to go to classroom every now and then. So I have gone into a classroom for learning social media back in 2000, 8 or 9, when it just about started, or 2010
Wow.
started a 3-day, session.
Mhm.
I've gone into a classroom for learning about retail design. I am planning to go into classroom once again. I think the mum's PhD bit will probably is coming. So
Yeah.
that's okay.
Fingers crossed on that one.
Fingers crossed on that. And the K is the knowledge from the books, the
Mhm.
knowledge, the fact that knowledge has been put together over there. So K stands for knowledge from the books. I strongly believe in reading and that people should read. And I know you and me talking to each other, some books came up.
Yep.
And then what happened was that when I did the rock principle, it was only the rock. And then somebody helped me add on the S. So they said rocks. So that's what you saw in the paper over there, which is sharing, which is what you and I are doing today.
How nice. How nice.
So
Like
you also learn more when you share. Uh,
anytime.
and the other thing of the S also is staying teachable, therefore.
There.
Okay.
Wow.
A lot of us don't think about the fact that we may not be teachable. We must be teachable. Actually, there's a Sanskrit shlok, and I don't know the shlok, but it talks about the fact that for learning to happen, there
Mhm.
has to be a guru, there has to be a shishya, and then there is the willingness to learn on part of the shishya. Otherwise, the
Wow.
learning will not happen.
Wow. I'm getting goosebumps on that one.
So sweet.
Wow. That's so beautiful and so powerful because willingness you cannot teach. It has to come from within. It's like you cannot teach, you cannot create hunger. It's similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Deepali, for being on the show, for teaching us so many things, and most importantly, being so authentic. It's not only so many times you meet people, especially in the field of marketing, that talk about authenticity of life, of brand, but they do not live by it. And you can see through it, but they do talk about it. But I was so happy to find that in your handwriting and, find these correlations. It was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditi, for saying that. And I hope the brand Aditi also goes through authenticity, agility, and you keep on adding ability to yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a great wish to have for me and my team. I think all of us are going to learn so much from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Absolutely Right podcast. Please tell me what were your key takeaways. What did you learn in this conversation? Share your story. My email ID is writ@aditisurana.com. If you have questions about your own decision making and your leadership style, and if you want me to give you feedback one on one or work with your organization as a high performance coach, you can check out all the services that we offer on aditisurana.com. And if you're as fascinated as I am with this subject of graphology, and if you want to learn how to analyze your spouse, your child, and even hire better for that matter by looking at people's writing, then you can join a graphology masterclass. I will see you on Friday with one more episode of the Absolutely Right podcast. Till then, happy writing.